Madam President, honorable members, we are now here to discuss the repeated and unacceptable Houthi attacks on commercial ships in the Red Sea, which violate international law, threaten maritime security and peace in the region, and disrupt global trade. Until today, 28 attacks were carried out by the Houthis since mid-November. And the Houthis are presenting their repeated attacks as a support to the Palestinian people, and they have launched some missiles toward Israel. The Houthis, together with Hezbollah and some Iraqi and Syrian militias, are aligned with Hamas. The EU has continuously condemned those acts and underlined that they must stop, notably through the EU spokesperson's statements of 5 and 13th of December, and through our latest EU27 statement of January 12th. EU also called for the immediate release of the Galaxy Leader vessel and its 25-member crew illegally seized on November 19th. EU services are also following closely the joint military response of UK and US members of the Prosperity Guardian operation to repeated Houthi attacks against maritime vessels. The US and UK have carried out joint strikes on 11 and 12 of January on over 60 targets at 16 sites in Yemen, with the support of Australia, Bahrain, Canada, and the Netherlands, as a response to repeated and escalating Houthi attacks in the Red Sea, notably the complex attack of January 9th, following repeated messages from the international community. The EU continues actively engaging and coordinating with partners in all diplomatic fora to counter the Houthi threats to commercial vessels and find effective solutions. The High Representative, on behalf of the EU and its member states, issued a joint statement published last Friday welcoming the 10th of January UN Security Council Resolution 2722, and the UN Security Resolution recognizes that states are entitled to defend themselves against the attack against their vessels, in perfect contradiction, by the way, of international law. The EU NAVFOR Operation Atalanta shares maritime awareness with the multi-nation operation Prosperity Guardian from its operations in the Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden. Further options will be discussed at the level of the European Council concerning the EU maritime response. However, it is unlikely that the Houthis will be deterred immediately, given the international visibility they have enjoyed with these actions. Houthi leaders have already indicated they will continue their attacks as long as the situation in Gaza remains. They have already resumed attacks with a missile fired towards US forces on January 14th. Last point of concern is the impact these developments in the Red Sea can have on peace efforts in Yemen, which had reached a new positive phase on December 23rd with the UN's takeover of the peace process following a year of Saudi Houthi back-channel talks. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. And now we come to the round of speakers on behalf of the political group, starting with Radan Kanev for the EPP.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Commissioner, this debate can be conducted from several viewpoints. First of all, the viewpoint of international security and security of international commerce. We know that a large proportion of international sea traffic goes through the Red Sea. And here we should say very clearly what the situation is. The Houthis groups is a terrorist group which engages in piracy in the areas where international navigation is most heavy. The limited, although military response to this piracy is an adequate measure, and there can be no doubt about this. This is always an adequate response to activities which threaten commercial navigation. I was shocked to hear on several occasions from people whom I consider to be Russian spokespeople, is that the military response is not an adequate response. This crisis should also be approached from a humanitarian point of view. That is the life and interests of the population of Yemen. The so-called Houthis are a group funded by the Islamic terrorist regime in Iran, which is responsible for a civil war which has been going on for a decade now, and for the hundreds of thousands of Yemeni civilian victims, and the devastating humanitarian catastrophe there.
For the S&D Group, Pedro Marques.
Chair, Commissioner, colleagues, let me be crystal clear. We totally condemn the ongoing attacks on maritime activities in the Red Sea from these Houthi-controlled territories in Yemen with the support of Iran. The Houthi attacks threaten the international navigation and the maritime security in grave disrespect from international law. And they endanger the lives of the civilian crews, some of them already abducted, and create serious environmental and obvious economic risks. Contrary to what the Houthi leaders say, the attacks are of no help in addressing the war in Gaza. In fact, they further destabilize the region and create increased risks for the populations. They also destabilize the world commerce, with effects that are already being felt in many regions in the world. We don't need another factor to fuel a possible economic crisis. We therefore urge the Houthis to immediately stop the attacks and call on all parties to avoid further escalation in the region. We particularly want to tell directly to the Iran regime, be on the right side for once, on the side of stability in your own region. We call on the member states to be meaningful and take immediate and concerted effort to address these attacks, if the Houthis, of course, do not stop immediately. We need an effective operation in the Red Sea with an executive mandate to ensure the naval security in the region. This should be built from close cooperation with the regional actors, but also with our international parties, many of them which are already acting on the ground. There is no more time for ambiguities. Europe is a commercial stronghold in the world, but that also means we must protect our trade capacities. Europe and the world are already suffering from the consequences of successive wars and the spike on energy prices and inflation that came with it. People are dying by the thousands because of these wars. We cannot add the death or the abduction of the crews in the Red Sea, the destruction of our vessels, and the halt of a good part of the world commerce to all the tragedies already taking place in front of us. The EU is a world player and should act as such, including, as the High Representative referred recently, by enforcing the United Nations Security Council Resolution 2722, which reiterates that the states have the right to defend their vessels against these attacks in accordance to international law. Let us show that we can act, we will act when threats to the international law arise, no matter where or by whom these threats come to reality. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now the floor goes to Hannah Neumann for the Green Group.
Dear colleagues, it is crucial that we have a joint European response to the Houthi attacks in the Red Sea, but at the same time, it is our duty to safeguard the progress that peace efforts have made in Yemen recently. The European Union indeed needs to play its part to secure a safe passage for commercial ships, to prevent a further increase in commodity prices in the region, and to ensure that the merchant vessel Galaxy Leader is freed, including its crew, among them EU citizens. And to be honest, I'm a little surprised that it took the Council so long to come up with a proposal for an EU mission, and hopefully a positive decision will be taken soon. But Commissioner, I was also surprised that you were not sharing any information on this with us here today. So do we really need to rely on political leaks to get the information, what is planned, what the process is, when the mission will be happening? So maybe in your concluding remarks you could share some more information. At the same time, it is crucial that the Yemeni people we have to make sure that the Yemeni people who have been suffering from war, massive violence, escalation, and the humanitarian crisis for 10 years will also be seen and will also be important in our response. I was in Yemen in December as the head of a delegation of this parliament. And I can tell you, Yemenis want nothing more than this catastrophe to end. And we need to make sure that their voices are also heard in the ongoing debate, that their needs are taken into account when setting up our joint EU response, because otherwise the long-term effects of our policy in the region would be detrimental. And colleagues, allow me to make one more additional remark. All the drones and missiles that are being fired at merchant ships or in the direction of Saudi Arabia, or even trying to target Israel, they were manufactured in Iran, they were transferred to the Houthis by the Revolutionary Guards, and no one will be able to bring peace to this region unless we finally dare to revise our Iran policy, to take a stance, to revise our relations with this brutal regime, and to take a clear stance against the Revolutionary Guards. We must call them and treat them as what they are: a terrorist organization terrorizing its own citizens and the whole region.
Thank you very much. And now for the left group, Mark Potenga.
Thank you very much, Madam President, Mr. Commissioner. So following the Israeli attack on Gaza, Yemen has indeed been attacking ships, the Houthi groups, and denying freedom of navigation in the Red Sea. This has an impact on world trade. It also has an impact on factories in Belgium. It is, of course, remarkable, first of all, that those that are now calling for action against Yemen are the same ones that never called for action against Israel. Protecting trade routes for some in this chamber is clearly more important than protecting the lives of Palestinians. Now, we need to be clear, because those colleagues that say we need action seem to forget that there's already been action. Last week, the United States, with a number of European countries, bombed Yemen, bombed cities in Yemen. This was not the first time. Barack Obama bombed Yemen. Donald Trump bombed Yemen. Joe Biden now bombed Yemen. Saudi Arabia bombed Yemen for years. And none of these interventions brought peace or security to the region. Rather, on the contrary, as these attacks were not covered by the Security Council resolution, which spoke about protecting vessels, not about bombing Yemen, this might actually deteriorate the image of Europe and the West in the world further. What we need is now a critical assessment of this policy and clearly look at the consequences and alternatives. And of course, we need a ceasefire in Palestine as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have right now in the Catch the Eye procedure 3 speakers, and I'll start with Mick Wallace.
The Houthis have made a humanitarian intervention in the Red Sea in an effort to bring the genocide in Gaza to an end. The Houthis have killed nobody while disrupting shipping in the Red Sea, ships which are facilitating the Israeli genocide. The Israeli regime has killed over 23,000 civilians. Over 10,000 of them are children. So who did the US and the UK attack? No, they didn't attack the Israeli regime because they're supporting the genocide. They attacked the Houthis instead, killing at least 6 people. So Western powers are prepared to kill people to protect the movement of goods. But the same Western powers killed thousands with sanctions in Iran, in Syria, in Venezuela, preventing the movement of some goods. The Houthis are showing solidarity with the Palestinian people, just like South Africa did in The Hague. But sadly, the EU's solidarity is with US empire and the Zionists. Shame on the EU!
Thank you. I give the floor to Claire Daly.
Thanks, President. Every day now the mask falls further. On the very same day that the West's pet bulldog Israel was hauled into The Hague to face the charge of genocide in which EU countries are complicit, our so-called like-minded partners, the US and Britain, flout the UN Charter to commit their latest crime of aggression: illegal, unprovoked, unjustified airstrikes on Yemen. Lawless, barbarous acts to inflame the region and to make worse the catastrophic cost of living crisis being experienced by millions of Europeans. And now some of you actually want to join them. Seriously, with a straight face, people have come in here and said they want to do that in order to uphold international law. The very same international law that a horrified world has watched being trampled into the ruins of Gaza while the EU hands Israel more weapons and cheers on the genocide. The Yemenis have killed no one. 25,000 Palestinians are dead, and all you're enraged about is international shipping. It's over. The EU has no moral authority. If you want to sort the situation out, end the genocide.
I have to stop you. It's too long. And our last speaker is Özlem Demirel, please.
Frau Präsidentin. Ja, natürlich.
Madam President, of course, the attacks of the Houthi militia on commercial ships in the Red Sea should be criticised. But if you criticise that and at the same time say nothing about the crimes of Israel in Gaza, is being hypocritical and is not contributing to a sustainable solution in the region. The US in the UN Security Council is calling for a ceasefire in Gaza. They're not doing that. It's unacceptable. The escalation in Yemen is a threat for the people there. It's not something being said from a member on the left, the ERC committee too. Colleagues, we're talking about Yemen, a country in which people live who for 9 years have been suffering from war where there's a humanitarian catastrophe. And this humanitarian catastrophe, colleagues, was advanced by weapons made in the EU. And now the federal government in Germany is saying they want to send Eurofighters to Saudi Arabia. No, we need de-escalation. In what we have in the Middle East is the wrong thing. It's against the interests of people throughout the world.
And now I give the floor to Commissioner Nicolas Schmit, please.